Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Police Off the Cuff After Hours. My name is Mark DeMeo. I'm your host. Tonight, sitting in as my co-host is the one and only Mike the Prodigy Cologne. What's up, buddy?
Good evening, Mark. Good to be here.
Mike has a great podcast. It's called Mike the New Haven. We'll give him a chance to shout it out later on in the show. But I just want to bring up my guest. Very excited to have him. He's a retired NYPD detective. He's a clinical psychologist specializing in police and public safety psychology. He operates and owns Blue Line Psychological Services in Great Neck, New York, treating police officers and their families. He also works with the Fraternal Order of Police. Um, he does the pre-employment screening, or he used to anyway, with the NYPD. How about a hand for Tom Coghlan, folks? Let him feel the love.
Thanks for having me, Mike. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. This is an interesting time to be a psychologist, especially working with cops.
Very much so.
I mean, I can't imagine. The reason why I brought up that pre-employment, are you still doing that?
I do, not for the NYPD, but I currently do pre-employment psychological evaluations for a number of other agencies. MTA Police, I've done United Nations Police, Bayonne, New Jersey, a variety of other agencies. So I do it as an independent consultant or through my practice, but no longer for the NYPD, although I've done hundreds for the NYPD. And I currently do the disqualification appeals for the NYPD. So if a candidate gets disqualified, they want to appeal it, I do those evaluations as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, anybody who's going to take the test or trying to be a cop should probably fail the psychological. Just like automatically out of the gate. Like, what's the matter with you? Are you crazy? Have you seen what's on TV?
As I've often said, if you're still on the job after 25, you should get a fitness for duty and be psyched off the job if you're still sticking around after 25. Similar idea, right?
Yeah. I just found that interesting. So tell us a little bit about your practice and how you help law enforcement.
Sure. So I retired abruptly in December 2018, and I really had no plan. I had no intention to retire. It was not my intention. I had no game plan. I had nothing lined up. I had no sweet gig to run to, nothing like that whatsoever. In December 2018, I found myself retired off the job, and I decided that I wanted to open up a private practice and help cops and help their families. And individual psychotherapy, which is really my passion, right? Individual psychotherapy. There are many things you can do in the field of psychology. You can do assessment work, you can do consultation, you can do operational embedment in different units. For me, intervention and doing psychotherapy is absolutely my passion. And so what I wanted to do was open up a private practice and deliver individual psychotherapy and family systems therapy to law enforcement exclusively. And it took a little bit of time building that. February 2019, I actually created the practice and found a space for it. And it took most of 2019 to really get it up and running, get some feet underneath it. But what I do now is I provide individual psychotherapy to exclusively to law enforcement of all levels and all ranks, right? So not just the NYPD, certainly the NYPD, but not just the NYPD. I have officers I'm licensed in New York, New Jersey, and Florida. So I have officers from multiple states, multiple jurisdictions at the local, state, and federal level that I see in individual psychotherapy. Some of them because they're there on their own self-referral, and some of them because they're there on some kind of an ultimatum or a second chance agreement to get engaged in therapy. And I also do family systems work, where I work with law enforcement families as well, the entire family unit.
I think it's safe to say that obviously the pandemic has been horrible for all of us, probably except for you because you're a psychologist and you can do virtual stuff, right? Isn't that how you're getting in touch with all your clients now that live in Florida, New Jersey?
90. Well, if they're out of state, certainly. And I see I see people from in the northern realms of New York. Let me put it that way without naming agencies. But I see people from areas in New York where there's just it's geographically prohibitive for them to come actually see me in person, as well as New Jersey and Florida. But for those people, for the officers who are in my geographical area of employment, right, for those officers that are in the 5 boroughs of the city, some even a little bit over the northern borough of the city, 90+% of my officers are still coming to see me in person. I never shut down during COVID, not a single day, not one.
Mm-hmm.
My office was up and operational through the entire pandemic. My officers were coming in person through the entire pandemic, and they still are. And so I never shut down. I never sheltered in place. I never quarantined. If my cops were going to work and putting themselves out there in the pandemic, I was damn sure coming to work too, because if they can go out there and stand on the front lines during the pandemic or get spit on during protests through 2020, I could sit in a chair and listen to their stories, right? So I never shut down once through the pandemic. And so 90+% of my clients are still in person and have been throughout the pandemic.
All right. That's good. God bless you for doing that. Let me ask you something. Is that the chair right there?
That's the chair. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the chair. There might be a few people watching tonight who recognize that chair. You never know.
I like that chair. That looks very
That's
comfy.
the chair. That's it.
That's great. It looks like almost like the Sopranos chair that he used to sit in.
Sometimes it reminds me of the chair from Pee-wee's Playhouse a little bit, to tell you the truth.
Oh, yeah, that was a
That's
big chair.
chair. But yeah, there's a Dr. Melfi vibe going on there a little bit, I guess.
So when you mention, well, let's go back to this. This is concerning to me right now, because you mentioned about the cops. If they're going out there to work on the front line, you're going to be available to them too. And now all these people, not just police officers, but nurses and doctors, anybody in healthcare, or with these mandates now, if they for some reason don't want to get vaccinated, they're losing their jobs. Teachers as well. So as far as law enforcement goes, that's got to be. I'm wondering if there's an uptick in depression with these specific officers. I don't know. I would imagine it's very, very disheartening.
Yeah. So to the teachers and the nurses and the healthcare workers of the world, I say, welcome to the table, and God bless you. Right. We have long had a history in law enforcement of going from heroes to zeros quickly. And so I say, welcome to the table. And yes, we certainly do see, I'm seeing, certainly in my practice on the couch, right? I'm seeing a great uptick in depression, in anxiety. So diagnostically speaking, right, in the beginning, we refer to it as an adjustment disorder, right? So some situational stressor has occurred and you're struggling to adjust to these particular situational life stressors. So I'm seeing a huge uptick in adjustment disorders with mixed anxiety and mood disorders. I'm seeing an uptick in depressive disorders and generalized anxiety. A lot of struggle going on, really esoteric struggles about what does this occupation mean to me? And once I become betrayed by this occupation, betrayed by the agency I work for and the municipality that I serve and the people of the community that I serve, once I become betrayed by them, what was the point of all of this? And why am I doing this? And what else have I built for myself? And what else can I do with myself? And I'm seeing a lot of these, what I would call esoteric questions coming up that the people are really struggling with.
If I may jump in here, often in times of crisis, it is followed by a crisis of identity. People do a lot of self-reflection after 9/11, not even first responders, but people in general did self-reflections on where their life was. In times of war, I imagine it's been the same thing. And this is kind of like a war, although it's a health crisis. It's still been a crisis that has killed over 700,000 people in this country alone. And what you've seen is people who were already struggling with their mental health, struggling with their life, and trying to battle through that. Now it's a pancake effect because you add in the effects of the pandemic, and maybe they've gotten sick. Maybe they know somebody who's getting sick. Maybe they know somebody who's passed away. Today, as a matter of fact, Officer Mize Murray of Transit District 32 was lost to COVID, and we send our thoughts and prayers to his family. So for that person battling the pancake effect, what have you tried to tell them to try and help them through, well, essentially, for lack of a better way to word it, double trouble?
Yeah, I mean, so it's a great question, and this last year and a half has been, I mean, certainly it's been a troubling year and a half for everybody, right? But for those people on the front line, especially for our police officers who are struggling through a very difficult year, not only dealing with the pandemic and not wanting to bring the pandemic home to our loved ones, and dealing with all the ritualistic behaviors that we're seeing in regard to the homecoming and how they're dealing with that process, and not wanting to bring it home to aged parents, and then layering on top of that the stressor of dealing with the social and political unrest that we saw throughout 2020, and to a certain degree we're still seeing today. But to specifically answer your question, what do I say to people? That's one of the it's one of the places I struggle, right? In that, much like when someone's in the grieving process, and we've all heard this sort of old adage, I have no words. I have no words that can ease your pain while you're going through the loss of a child or whatever it might be. What words could I give you, right? In a similar way, it's very similar to that. What words can I give you that would heal your pain, right? And often it's not about giving you words. And often the way that I operate is in a more Socratic dialogue. Socratic dialogue meaning that chances are you already know the answer to your questions. Chances are you already know what it is you need to say or what you need to hear. What I need to do is create an environment of safety and comfort and free thinking with you, where we can come to the conclusion that you're already aware of, when we can come for you to verbalize those things that you already know, but that maybe you haven't reached that conclusion of things you don't already know, things you don't say to other people, things you keep hidden deep inside, things that are just too intolerable to hear yourself say or to hear yourself verbalize. How can I create a safe enough environment? How can I create enough of a rapport with somebody to allow them to go places where they won't go in any other setting or with any other person in their life? And how do I create that kind of Socratic dialogue that allows them to reach the answer they already know that maybe they're just struggling to find?
Do you find that cynicism is the worst enemy for these first responders? And the reason that I asked that question is this: firemen, cops, EMS, they see so much, and you stack that up 5, 10, 15, 20 years at a time, where they feel they've just about seen everything, the worst pretty much of society. And you often find that they have trouble appreciating the beauties of life, of which there are many, and we have to remind ourselves of that in times of duress. So, of all the things that you have to deal with as a psychologist in examining these individuals, is cynicism your number one enemy?
No. Cynicism is prevalent. Most of my cops would argue, most of my clients would argue it's not cynicism, it's realism, right? And we would have this sort of mental exercise about where is the line between realism and cynicism, and how do I move you from a pessimistic outlook to an optimistic outlook on life, right? How do I help you find the good things in life rather than focusing on the bad things? But with that said, I would say no, it's not cynicism per se that is the greatest obstacle. It is the betrayal. It is organizational betrayal and it is community betrayal. And those I find are really the biggest pieces. When we think about burnout sort of has these three factors to it, right? So burnout has this experience of physical and mental exhaustion. That's one major variable in burnout. And then there's this variable of detachment from your experience and cynicism and pessimism, right? That's that second variable of burnout. The third variable of burnout, though, to me is the most important one. And that's the experience of feeling unfulfilled and unsatisfied because of the lack of reciprocity. A lack of reciprocity from your agency, a lack of reciprocity from your community, a sense of pouring a great deal of energy and effort into your work and there being no return on investment. No return on investment from your community who vilifies you, and no return on investment from your organization that betrays you. And to me, that's the biggest piece of it. It's that organizational and community betrayal and lack of reciprocity and lack of a sense of fulfillment and achievement.
Yeah, that's interesting you bring it up. I remember doing the riots. I was thinking, I mentioned this on the show quite a bit, just about the cop of the month. The guy who was going out there and really trying to do great work and was doing it, one cop of the month. And then within a couple of weeks, he's standing at some protest, some riot that turns into a riot, getting hit with something in the head, like a bottle or a brick, or maybe they're trying to, getting away from any number of things that could happen, a Molotov cocktail. And this is the you're still in the same precinct that you worked in, or maybe you're in the adjoining precinct, and just the one thing is, these people are coming from out of state. They don't know who the cop of the month is. They don't care. You're just a uniform. You're not even a person. So that becomes very, very disturbing when you see the people protesting and like, wait a minute, wasn't I the great guy weren't we great last week or yesterday? You know, that's got to wear on you.
One of the things that, again, that sort of calls to that idea of going from zero to hero, right? It's an interesting thing. So almost every one of my clients are law enforcement, whether they're local or state or federal or whatever it might be. Almost exclusively all my clients are law enforcement. Some of them are the families of law enforcement, or some of them are first responders, whether they're volunteer firefighters and they're not actually law enforcement, whatever it might be, but they fall somewhere in the first responder realm. And one of the things that I've experienced is that they're not ideologically monolithic, right? Meaning that because I exclusively treat cops and law enforcement and first responders, I don't treat 100%, far right conservatives. That's
Mm-hmm.
not the makeup of my clients.
Mm-hmm.
I have many of my clients that are of a variety of gender and or sexual orientations, that a variety of political affiliations and or ideologies. And maybe they're fiscally conservative but socially liberal or whatever it might be. The point is that we are not a monolithic identity, right? Because we put on a uniform every day doesn't mean that we're marching around with far right banners and pitchforks, right? However, to the public we are, it seems.
Yeah.
Right. And I think that the greatest conflict lies with those officers and first responders who are very socially liberal, or who are not in any way identified as. Many of my clients have never even had political thoughts. They couldn't tell you one politician from another. But now all of a sudden, because they put on a uniform every day to go to work, they're having some political ideology forced upon them and assumed upon them, and then treated as if by the public. And they say, but I don't understand. This isn't me. I'm not what they're saying I am, especially those officers who are black and blue. Right?
Oh my God! Forget it.
Who are in ethnic minorities, but wear the blue, and they're having assumptions made about them and really horrific, hateful things said about them by the public, and they're struggling with this identity conflict, this identity crisis. Who am I? What is this? Why am I being labeled this way? And what am I doing?
Social media hasn't helped this to where, let's give an example. When protests erupted over Diallo in 1999, what was not around in 1999? Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, to where if social media told you the entire story and you didn't go off anything else, you'd think the modern form of the Schutzstaffel was marching around and doing horrendous things. And that's not the case. So granted, that's not to say that every single one of your clients is on social media. Some are, some probably are not. As you just said, it's not a monolithic group. But with the advent of social media and with the general wild west nature of it, where so many of these horrific things are said and so many of these inaccurate pictures are painted, how often do you find yourself having to console your clients just from that?
Social media has done a tremendous amount of damage to society in general. Many of my clients have either completely deleted and or deactivated their social media accounts completely, or have really just distanced themselves from it, especially because of the experiences they've had with family members on social media. And the same family members who are going to come to you in December
for a PBA card
with their hand out, looking for that PBA card.
Yeah.
That same family member
Yeah.
posting on social media, all cops are bastards and blah, 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 and every other thing, and vilifying police, close relatives in some cases spouses, in some cases siblings. It's created a tremendous amount of division. It's a platform that allows for sort of anonymous divisiveness or this just this frankly hate speech, and it's created a tremendous amount of divisiveness in the.
You're 100% right. That happened to me. I had family members posting up during the whole thing about the police, and I'm like, wait a minute, I'm a cop. Your uncle's a cop too. I mean, yeah, your other uncle's a cop too. What are you doing? What are you saying? Are you like? And it hurts your feelings, but you also have to be a bigger person and overlook it and realize that, they're younger, they're caught up in this whole generation. And a lot of it has to do with this attitude where if I don't post something,
Yeah.
or that means that I'm not with it, or I'm against this movement. You don't have to post something. You just don't. You can just stay shut. That's an idea that most people don't realize at some point. Hey, before we go any further, you want to give a shout out to the people that are in the chat?
Yes, and before I do, I would like to say, because I'm seeing some people comment this, we are not discussing the Gabby Petito Brian Laundrie case for those folks. That's Real Crime Stories with Bill Cannon and Phil Grimaldi.
Yeah.
This is After Hours with Mark DeMeo and yours
we have
truly.
we have what's called a platform. Police Off the Cuff is a platform. We have several different shows. After Hours is one show. The Real Crime that Bill does is another show. I have Story Time with Mark DeMeo. Hopefully, we'll get Mike to do some stuff on our channel. We're building a platform here. So, we'd love to have you stay with us. Unfortunately, if you're here to hear anything about Gabby Petito updates with that, that's not this show. Sorry.
So onward with the shout-outs. Teresita Hillis, Lori is here. Boxing MMA 365, one of our moderators, of course. Single mom of four, she's a member. Angela Ang, of course, the great Angela Ang. Hugo Stiglitz III, I don't know if that's a real name or not, but it's funny. And on top of that, we have Jen Lowe, she's a constant. Mickey McMurphy, that might be the most Irish name I've ever heard. No offense, I love it. Angela Van, Polka Dot Suzanne, Penny Sue, Mr. Showtime 1K, and Michelina Serino, one of the more Italian names I've ever heard. Again, no offense, I love it.
Yankees for life. Did you mention him?
Yankees. Oh, my fellow Yankee fan. Yankees for life. We'll stick with them even if they're giving us so much pain right now.
There was a new addition, a new member, Glamour Witch Official. Hi, Glamour Witch Official. She's
Hello to her. And JoJo76. Hi from the UK. We have a big European audience, I must say. The UK, they love us over there. We're like the Beatles.
Oh, good. I want to get to the UK. I'm actually trying to. I would love to bring my show there. Just so I guess we got there. We'll come back to the chat. Listen.
Oh, Scotty Wagner, our boy Scotty Wagner. Can't forget him. Sorry, Scott. Love you, buddy.
This is a situation that I talked about a lot on past shows. This was my theory, my idea, because there seemed to be like a stigma, or at least they used to be, under the old job. The job that we were on. I came on in 92. I think you said you came on in 97 or 97, right? Yeah. That job, it was like the mob in a way. You don't go see psychiatrists or psychologist or whatever. It just wasn't. You were expected to tough it out. But we're living in a different time right now, different sentiments. Maybe people are more sensitive, whatever. But I think it's the perfect time right now to implement a situation where when you're in the academy, not only do you get your health insurance, but part of your health insurance, they side you up with your clinician. The same way you go see your the district surgeon, you also have a district surgeon that is just your mental health person. And you have to see him or them, let's say mandatory twice a year. So if everybody has to do it, there's no stigma attached to them. And then while you're there, if you say to them, listen, doc, I got a real problem I want to talk to you about, then you can have further appointments, and the job could figure out a way so you can basically be going on job time but not leaving job time, something where it could work out. And you don't have to tell anybody, and you're using the HIPAA Act. It's none of anybody's business. Nobody's going to take your guns away. Nobody's going to take you off patrol. And I think that's the direction the job needs to go in.
I'll give a few, unintentional or inadvertent shout outs throughout, but if you look at the way that the good Dr. Kevin Sobo out in Chicago Police Department, or the good Dr. Michael Craw out at LAPD, Chicago and LA provide in-house, in-service psychotherapy services, right? So the NYPD, the only in-house services are pre-employment psychological evaluations and fitness for duty evaluations. There is no in-house psychotherapy services or intervention services. And I understand that employee assistance unit is going to get all in a buzz and say, oh, but we're employee assistance unit. Right. Except that when employee assistance unit gets a client who represents a higher level of care, they get automatically referred over to psych services, right? They don't get referred out to someone, they get referred to psych services. And so I would argue that, right? But there are agencies out there who are doing it correctly. Chicago PD is doing it correctly, right? In providing in-house, free of charge psychotherapy services, not only to members of the Chicago Police Department, but to their families as well,
Wow.
right? That is a huge nut. That is a tremendous financial burden to carry on. The staff they carry, the salaries they pay, and the amount of investment of resources that they put into ensuring the mental health and the mental well-being of their members is impressive, and frankly puts other agencies to shame, right? And so, to your point, right, I've been an advocate of mandatory annual mental health wellness sessions for years, right? And thankfully, it's starting to gain traction. Maryland, for example, Maryland has passed legislation mandating, right, that annually you will have a mental health wellness session with a clinician. You have agencies, nonprofit agencies, run by for example, run by Dr. Marla Friedman, the Badge of Life, which is invested in helping connect agencies with clinicians for annual mental health services, right? There are agencies out there and not-for-profits out there doing it correctly. I've been a huge advocate of mandatory wellness sessions for many, many years, and they have to be done right, right? Don't call them, mental health sessions or whatever. Call them wellness appointments if that's what you need to destigmatize appearing. And it has to be done right. It needs to be outsourced, right? I believe, and Chicago does it differently, I believe it should be outside the agency, get referred out to a clinician who does not take notes throughout the session. There should be no note taking through the session. It should be primarily psychoeducational in purpose. It should be not to diagnose. It should not be a diagnostic session. It should be not diagnosing the person. I should be doing a psychoeducation session, explaining to them about mental health and mental wellness. The only thing that should be recorded is your attendance. That's it. Officer Smith attended. Check.
I agree with what you're saying. I don't want to cut you off, but I just want to get to this, make a point here as well. I agree with what you're saying without the notes, but if you're going to be seeing somebody on a regular basis, yeah, there has to be
But this
some
is not a regular basis.
Okay, but you're talking about the two
I
end.
didn't say anything about a regular basis. I never
Talking
said
about
anything
annual
about
visit.
that. One time a year, I said.
Okay.
I never said
all
anything about a regular basis. And then, if that cop decides it's a good fit with that clinician, and then they want to establish a doctor-patient relationship that the department will know exactly zero about, God bless. You can do that. You can create that relationship. The job will never find out about it, right? Because that's separate from the annual wellness session.
Yeah, that would have to be, because right now we're living in a time where there's nothing sacred. Any type of we created a HIPAA Act, and now you have to show if you're vaccinated. In a little while, you're gonna have to show all your mental health, everything that you ever did. You're gonna have to travel with a semen sample. You know what I'm saying? Just to show people, because now everybody's into your mental, into your health. The HIPAA Act was created so they can't ask you questions about your health.
There was an excellent article that ran a couple of years back, and that's an article that ran in the Police Chief magazine, written by Dr. Lou Schlosser out in Jersey, out in Oakland. And it was about how to reduce the perception of an adversarial relationship between law enforcement and mental health services, right? And Schlosser's argument goes something like this. When's the first time, sort of a blanket statement, basically speaking, maybe not in every single case, for the most part, when's the first time that a cop comes in contact with a mental health professional? Generally speaking, in their life, for the majority of police, when's the first time they sit down in front of a mental health professional? Generally,
the academy, when you're trying to get into the academy.
Right, it's pre-employment, right? And what does that mental health professional represent? A threat. They're an adversary. They're a threat. They're a boundary between you and the job that you want. So automatically, cops come to understand mental health professionals as adversaries and as boundaries. Generally speaking, when's the next time a cop might come in contact with a mental health professional? During a fitness for duty evaluation, right? Once again, an adversary. They're a threat. They're an enemy, right? Schlosser's argument is we should be creating situations in which we are combating that concept that mental health professionals only represent an adversarial relationship, that they're only a threat. They're only ever an enemy. Never trust them. You can't trust them. They're the enemy, man, right? Schlosser's argument is no. We should be creating a scenario in which there's a relationship built and fostered between a cop and a clinician that's not adversarial, and that's not a threat, right? And that is directly what feeds into this idea of arguing for mandatory mental health wellness sessions with a clinician who's outside the agency and who reports nothing back to the department except for attendance, right? In order to normalize the experience of sitting in that chair that you put up before, normalize that experience of sitting on the couch.
That's great. Before we go any further, let's just do the commercial now. Since we have Angie brought up a couple of good points, we'll come back to her.
I do want to come back to her for sure.
Here we go. You're on.
All right, folks, if you need an attorney, hopefully you don't get in any trouble. But if you do, you know who to call. My man, Joe Murray. Joe Murray helps out anybody in the New York area. He's based out in Great Neck, New York. And if you got to call him up. Hey, 646-838-1702. Again, 646-838-1702. 718-514-3855 is his cell. Again, 718-514-3855. Or email him, joe@jmurray-law.com. If you're in a bind, he will get you out of it. Hurry and call Joe Murray.
I like that. Hurry and call Joe Murray. That's great.
Thank you.
All right. So back to what we were talking about. Did anybody want to finish up? Because I have another question I want to ask.
Well, I just wanted to slip in and ask a couple of questions here to Tom. You know, you mentioned, or actually Angela mentioned, I should say, and Angela's a retired NYPD 20-year veteran herself who worked most of her career in Manhattan, I believe. And she said earlier in the chat that the job will use it against you. You talk about adversarial relationships sometimes between the job and headquarters, whatever the job may be, fire department, law enforcement. There's that adversarial relationship to where you hear them often say the brass. And more times often than not, they're saying it with scorn. So when it comes to, again, lessening that tension, since we're talking about law enforcement specifically, and you were in the NYPD, both of you were, what can one PP do to lessen that tension?
So I was, so let me just back up. From 2000, I got received my doctorate in 2010 while I was still on the job, right? I went back to grad school, full-time on midnights on the job and full-time in grad school. And a full-time externship, 40 hours a week, and full-time work with the NYPD and raising a family and everything else. So I come out in 2010, I have my doctorate, and I get transferred to the medical division. And that's a longer story. I'll be happy to fill you in on that one day. But I get transferred to the medical division to go to work for psych services, right? And I land on the psych evaluation side of the house, which is the in-service side of the house, not the candidate side of the house, but the in-service side of the house, doing fitness for duty. So putting cops on restricted duty, taking their guns away from them, keeping them out of restriction for a period of time, putting them back, giving their guns back, etc. So I did that from 2010 to 2014, doing fitness for duty evaluations, etc. And absolutely, you know, there's an adversarial relationship, right? Because inherently, there has to be, right, in that role, right? So, you know, one of the things that I think sometimes cops overlook, you know, and I'm not advocating for the adversarial relationship. What I'm saying is that you have to look at who is your client. Who is my client? I'm a psychologist who's working for the police department, doing fitness for duty evaluations. Guess who their client is? The New York City Police Department. Their client is not the cop sitting in the chair, right? So of course, whose best interest are they going to represent? And who are they going to err on the side of in decision making? The department and the city, because that's their job. That's what we expect of them. And frankly, there is an obligation to public safety involved in fitness for duty evaluations, and there is an obligation to ensure a safe workplace involved in fitness for duty evaluations. And neither one of those obligations should be taken lightly, right? So I in no way am criticizing the psychologist doing fitness for duty evaluations. However, it organically creates an adversarial relationship. Right?
Can you get jammed up if you're on the job and you're working as a psychologist for that unit and one of the people that you evaluated goes off the rails and it wasn't in any of the reports, or you're the one who said it was okay to give them their guns back? Could you get jammed up for that?
So, I mean, can you get jammed up for it? And I'd say probably not, because you're not the end. You're not the end all, right? So as a psychologist at Left Rack, if I make the decision to take some off restriction and give them their gun back and send them back, I don't take their gun out of my drawer and go, here, officer, here's your gun, go back to work. It doesn't work.
Unless
like
you were
that.
filming a movie.
Right. I have to write a lengthy report. That report goes to the director of psychology. He has to read the report, and then he has to sign an endorsement. That first endorsement goes to the commanding officer of the medical division, who then reads the report, has to put a second endorsement on it. So the idea that like some psychologist is reaching into their desk and giving a cop back his gun is just ridiculous, right? So there are so many multiple levels of supervision over that psychologist that you would never burn for it, because even though your name is on that report, you've got multiple levels of supervision signing endorsements on top of you, right?
Yeah.
So are you going to get jammed up for giving someone back their gun? No. But I mean, are you going to do your due diligence and making sure that you're meeting the obligation of public safety and the obligation to ensure a safe work environment? Absolutely.
Well, let's talk about mental health in how we can. All right, I'll give you my backstory. About 10 months ago, I was online and I saw this thing about the benefits of a cold shower. Long story short, I learned about Wim Hof. I started doing the cold showers and the breathing, which led to meditation. I feel like now, 10 months later, I'm so much better equipped to handle situations that would normally disturb me for a long periods of time, maybe take over my day. I do my 10-minute meditation. I do my breathing for a half hour. I kind of sort of knock that out. I knock it out. I put it in its place. I also started getting involved in the Stoics, reading Marcus Aurelius, the meditation book, and trying to follow those philosophies. And it's helped me tremendously. And I'd like to say I kind of chose this time to do it in my life because of what the time we're living in. I didn't. It was just coincidence, but it has helped me immensely. So what advice can you give to people that can help them build up their mental strength so they can so they don't compartmentalize a lot of this stress, so they can alleviate it, so they can get rid of problems that don't really intimately affect them, but they're letting it affect them?
So I would suggest that you begin this hypothetical person that I'd be giving advice to. I would suggest that this person begins by recognizing that they're at a point where they can't do it alone, right? Nor should you want to do it alone, right? Nor should you be comfortable doing it alone, right? If you need to back up, right? If you're in a bad place or things are going sideways, I mean, you put over an 85, you put over 13, right? I mean, I don't see anybody feeling ashamed because they're putting an 85 over the air, right? Or they're putting a 13 over the air. They walk around with their head bowed in such shame that I call the 13. No, why would you? You needed help. So what's the difference between reaching out and asking for help, asking for assistance, asking for some guidance, right? So first of all, and I speak, and any one of my clients will come on and tell you, I speak very bluntly in my sessions, right? I do a lot of confrontation, I do a lot of challenge, and I speak very bluntly and very directly, right? And I would tell this person, get over yourself. Get over yourself. You don't need any help. You got it all. You figured it all out. Everything's fine. Because when I look around, your life's kind of falling apart. So I'm not really certain how you really have it all together and you don't need any help, but so be it, right? I would suggest by suggesting maybe you don't have it all together. Maybe you're not the answer to everything. Maybe you can ask for help. Maybe you can put out an 85. Maybe you can put out a 13. What's the worst that happens? People show up and help you. Well, that's terrible, right? So, and this is, I mean, I work very directly, right? And very kind of confrontationally with a number of my clients, especially the ones that can tolerate it. And my idea is to help them build up that degree of tolerance or being confronted or being challenged in their thinking, right? Because often we lock ourselves into ways of thinking that we're convinced is the only way we're thinking. There are no other options. We walk around in the world with a limited set of options in our thinking. We have all these options in the way of thinking, and we lock ourselves into like this manner, right? And I try to encourage my clients to say, why are you locking yourselves into this limited set of thinking? Like, why are you so convinced of these conclusions that you're drawing, right? Why can't we think outside this? Why can't we grow our options in our way of thinking? And I would encourage this person to understand that all that happens in this therapeutic relationship is one person hearing what you have to say and giving you observations and interpretations of it, right? There's no threat. And frankly, if you were so afraid of threat, you wouldn't have taken this job, right? And there's nothing in that room that's so threatening, right? It's sitting down in a room and speaking to somebody. We're the occupation that the job comes over, there's a 34, or there's shots fired, and we're flying there, lights and sirens, we're, pulling kids out of cars and, and running into gunfire. But it's too threatening to sit in a chair and talk to somebody for 45 minutes. I'm not certain that I really I'm not seeing it. I'm not really seeing the threat, right? And so I would encourage somebody who's struggling with all of these thoughts, stop being so afraid of asking for help, right? Stop being so afraid of sitting in a chair for 45 minutes and talking to somebody. It's the worst you could do for yourself is learn a different way of thinking, learn other options for thinking. And I do a lot of experiential stuff with my clients. I do a lot of box breathing, and I do a lot of guided imagery, and I do a lot of mindfulness work, which is sort of what you're describing, becoming aware of my thoughts in the moment, and understanding that my thoughts in the moment are just a thought. I can allow them to just go and not judge myself for them and not feel the need to act on them. So I do a lot of breathing. I do a lot of guided imagery. I do a lot of mindfulness work. And I would encourage my clients to be open to all of that.
Polka Dot Suzanne, she puts cold showers with a question mark. It's part of the Wim Hof. If you have, go on YouTube, download the Vice documentary on Wim Hof, WHIM HOFF, and
If you
and
have
you'll
to
see.
explain it, Mark, it's not a good thing. No, I'm just kidding.
No. Well, today I do a ice bath once a week, sometimes twice, but today was my ice bath day. It's a crime ghost. I have been seeing a psychologist for years. He's great. I have Asperger's. I'm on the autism spectrum. They also mentioned that I have meltdowns all the time. It is hard.
I'd like to accelerate past that first step. Okay, so they now are in a position where you've spoken to them bluntly, and they understand, okay, I need help. But now there comes the part that I kind of referred to it earlier, and I apologize if the question sounds redundant in nature, but the trauma aspect. For example, you both were 9/11 first responders. I can't even imagine what you both had to see down at ground zero. And just everything that one can see. Sometimes the loss of friends in the line of duty along the way, and things of that nature. All of us in different forms are haunted by our past. Just to give a small glimpse, and I mentioned this on the show before, in middle school, I was bullied a lot. And though I had a lot of sleepless nights and a lot of really haunting nights because I went to school every day afraid, and I came home every day just depressed and morose. So to move past that and make peace with that and try not to dwell and look back too much to where it doesn't haunt you and affect your future. What do you say in that next stage to help your clients make peace with their past in order to move on with their present?
Yeah. So the work that I do in regards specifically to trauma, right now I'll just be speaking specifically to trauma. I'm an EMDR trained clinician, so if anyone's familiar with EMDR, it's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. It's a long-winded term for meaning that we try to help. So in short, the brain stores traumatic material in a different area of the brain than it stores other material, right? So if we think about it, like our memories, right? When I have a memory, so right now you're not thinking about it, but if I want you to think about the street that you grew up on, suddenly that's coming into focus, right? How did that happen? Where did that come from? Where did your brain go and get that, right? Where does that actually physically exist? It's in there somewhere, right? So where is that physically in your brain, right? Where is your childhood phone number, right? Physically, where is that located in the brain? Well, traumatic memories are physically located in the brain somewhere different than those memories, right? They're located in a space that does not recognize logic, does not recognize the concept of time. It doesn't understand that trauma happened in the past. It believes it's happening right now when we activate it, right? And so where traumatic memories are stored is in a place of illogic and irrationality and a lack of reason. It's stored in there with certain sights and smells and other aspects of the memory that will often trigger it, pop it up, right? And so when I do EMDR work, when I do trauma work with my clients, it's about moving that memory from where it is stored to helping it reprocess and move to other areas of the brain where it can be thought about logically. Right? Now, to do that, it's not magic, right? There's ways that we can do it. There's processes, mechanisms by which we do it. But we begin with something called resourcing, right? Resourcing is about giving my clients skills, actual practical skills that they can use to regulate themselves and regulate their own emotions when they find themselves becoming emotionally dysregulated, becoming fearful, becoming angry, and those skills that they can draw upon to do that. So working with a client who has traumatic memories and negative thoughts associated with those traumatic memories, negative thoughts such as, I am bad, I am worthless, I did not do enough, I was not strong enough, whatever it might be, right? Whatever the negative thought is, that's where we start. We start with the negative thought, right? And we start moving that negative thought. We start replacing that negative thought with a positive thought, or a thought to contradict that negative thought to replace it with, right? It's a much longer process. Will take a little bit longer to sort of go into, but it's about confronting that negative thought, challenging it, and reinstalling a positive thought in its place and moving it into a place in the brain where it can be logically processed.
Thank you, Doc. That actually helps me out a lot.
I wanted to say, man, we're getting a lot of people in the chat that said they're sorry to hear about the fact that you got bullied. And I wish I was, I mean, if you still know where these people are, I'll come with you. I'll fuck them up.
Listen.
No, you don't understand. I used to fight. I could fight. I'll fuck somebody up.
That's all in the past. Thankfully, college was a lot better. I had so much fun in college because, well, people were a lot more mature, and that was night and day. It was a wonderful experience later on in my educational life. But I do want to get to a super chat by the aforementioned Angela Ang. She says in a $10 super chat. Thank you for that, Angela. What is that when you count down from 100 in increments of 7?
So there's psychologists always need to be a little careful, right? There is trade sensitive information, there is test sensitive information, and we would never want to invalidate a test by giving away sort of the backdrop of the test, not so much as its secrets, but you never want to tell somebody. For example, I get phone calls all the time that goes something like this. Hey, Doc, I saw your webpage. I'm going to be taking my written test next week. I'm hoping you can meet with me and tell me how to beat the test. Right?
How much do you charge? How much do you charge for that?
No, I would never ever take a
I'm
case
just
like
messing
that.
around.
And I tell them in no uncertain terms. There's no way I'm giving you trade secret, trade sensitive, test sensitive information, right? So psychologists always have to be very careful about walking this line of ethics, right? With that said, counting back from 100 by 7s, it's an aspect of what we call the mini mental status examination. The mini mental status examination is a brief screening instrument that we use to understand someone's cognitive functioning in the present. We use it for other reasons, malingering tests and things of that nature. Basically, it's trying to understand, is there a neurological impairment going on right now? Is the person able to track this progressive number sequencing? If they're not, right, if someone can't count backwards from 100 in 7s, perhaps there's some kind of a neurological impairment that we need to look at, right? Because maybe the person's coming here because they're saying that they're having this symptom or that symptom, and we do a mini mental on them, and they can't count back from 100 by 7s. We need to say, is there some kind of neurological impairment here that we need to have this person referred out to a neurologist and get a neurological workup before I can even see them in therapy? Because maybe this has nothing to do with psychology. Maybe this is about neurology, right? Maybe they need to be looked at by a neurologist. For example, I have clients come in with symptoms of panic disorder, symptoms of a panic attack. However, many of the symptoms in a panic attack are similar to the symptoms of cardiac arrest, right? So what I want to do first is send that person out to a cardiologist to have a full cardiology screen before I can conclude that this is panic disorder, actually, right? The same way, right? Mini mental status, we need to rule out that this isn't some kind of a neurological episode that's going on. And so a mini mental status exam is a very brief screening instrument. Counting down by 7s from 100 is one element of a multi-question format and a mini mental status examination to let us know neurologically what's going on with somebody.
Hey, Mickey McMurphy, speaking of bullying, I guess his mother sent me to school with my sister's hand-me-down Joni Loves Chachi lunchbox, and I got jumped in the schoolyard. Well, I'm sorry, Mickey, that happened to you. Parents, they can never understand. It's like you're a parent, you were a kid once. How do you not understand the evil that children can be left alone? And you know what I'm saying? It's that's horrible, man. That's horrible. And
He's also dating himself. He's also dating himself with the Chachi reference.
Yeah, I have
right
no
now,
idea what that is.
if you had a Joni Loves Chachi lunchbox right now in mint condition, you could probably get a pretty penny for it. I'll tell you that. Girl interrupter. Anger can be fear of being hurt or rejected or humiliated. Yeah, that's definitely true. Um, Anger. I was speaking of that. That meditations book. I read something that was interesting about anger and how the people that commit either crimes or violent acts out of anger, or let's just say hurt people out of anger, should be more easily forgiven than people that do it out of leisure. And I found out that was interesting. Like, for example, I don't know, being a womanizer and disrupting people's families, as opposed to the person that's going to go out and either rob or steal because they grew up with some trauma. The person that's actually more wicked and evil is the person that just for a goof is going to go out and disrupt somebody's life and family. And I found that interesting and felt a lot worse about myself being a womanizer for a number of years. But I'm done with that now.
But I must say, when it comes to aspects like that, of course, I mentioned my experiences in middle school. The reason why I have been able to kind of move past it at the time, my thought process was, okay, just because you're having these problems, that's not my fault. Why are you taking that out on me? But I understand when you lack the maturity to face those issues head on, that's what can cause you to lash out to where you get off to a bad start at home. You don't have a stable home life. Well, of course, you're going to be miserable all the time. And maybe you don't handle it the best, but at least somebody can understand. And so I guess I know that it's different from what you do, but we often see it, not even traumas from the job, traumas from childhood can dog you to where now you can't be a good big brother. Now you can't be a good husband or be a good wife. Now you can't be a good father or mother. So I know it's a little bit different for you, but on that aspect, just so someone can detach it, much like an umbilical cord is detached from a newborn baby, what is the key in your estimation, Tucker?
So, no one ever comes to my office and I say, open up with the question. I open up with the question of saying, what brings you here today, right? No one's answer is ever, oh, everything's going great. I'm just having a great day. My life is perfect. My life couldn't be better. I just really love psychotherapy. I just really want to dig into my own psyche, right? No one ever does that, right? Everyone that walks into my office, 99%, are in the middle of some crisis, right? And so they're not thinking clearly because they're in crisis, right? They're not thinking clearly about the crisis. They're focused on the crisis. And so any attempt to say, well, let's dig into your childhood, they're going to say, my wife is walking out on me, you worried about my childhood? Or I just got into the shooting, you worried about my childhood? Yeah, yes. Because the fact that you're in crisis is speaking to me about coping mechanisms, is speaking to me about deficits in functioning, is telling me that somewhere there's a root cause. There's something I need to get to, right? Now you are going to resist that because, listen, I'm not here for that, doc. I'm here because of this thing that happened. I'm here because of this dead baby I saw. I'm here because of this shooting. I'm here because I got into a fight in the locker room and the job took my guns. I'm here because my wife told me if I don't get into therapy, she's throwing me the fuck out and divorcing me. I'm here for that. I'm not here to talk about my childhood, right?
Yeah, I get it.
It takes a lot of sessions to convince somebody they're not here because of the crisis they're in. They're here for other reasons. The crisis is just what brought you here, right? And so to get to the root area that you're speaking about typically takes a lot of work and a lot of rapport building, right? We don't just jump into there on day one. But eventually, what a lot of my clients has come to see is repetition of dysfunctional patterns of behavior throughout their life, right? Repetitions of dysfunctional relationships, where I can say, well, let's look at how you're reacting to this crisis. And let's think about these other relationships in your lives, and let's look at how you're not just repeating these other dysfunctional relationships in your lives and this pattern right here, and why are you doing that? Let's dig into that, right? It takes time to get to that.
Let's tell us a little bit about the practice. Tell us a lot about Blue Line Psychological Services.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I opened
where the people could find you.
Yeah, so well, you can find me online at bluelinepsychological.com. My actual office is located in Great Neck, in Nassau County, and I have hours, all sorts of morning and night hours. I'm available weekends and virtually, and really whatever my clients need. So yeah, my office is located in Great Neck. When I was looking for an office space, I wanted something really off the beaten path. I wanted something discreet. I wanted something hidden away and tucked away where no one's going to see you coming and no one's going to see you going. And that's what I found. It's really just kind of a large, open living room space where we just sit and talk. And that's what I wanted in the practice. And luckily, I was able to find that.
All right, we're almost at the hour. Before we get there, we'll finish off with a final question in a minute. But I just want to tell our audience, if you enjoyed tonight's show, please do us a favor. Check out our Patreon. It's Police Off the Cuff on Patreon. We have several different tiers there. We'd love you to join up and be part of that and help us out. Help us keep doing the show here. Also, too, what is this? Well, if you're watching the show, you probably subscribed. If you haven't yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you're thinking about sponsoring, you're looking to reach over 22,000 people nightly per show. Please send me an email at OCTPOD1.
OTC, not
OCTPOD.
OTC, off the cuff. There you go. At pod one, because it says Oct as in October.
Oh, yeah, you're right, man. I did that. Yeah,
can you count backwards from 100 by 7, Mark? Can you
man, I
gotta
start
fix at 100 that. And count backwards by 7s?
I'll fix it for you. Watch this.
Right church, wrong pew. Hey, here we go. Other than that, how was the play, Mrs. Lincoln?
All right, you squeezed it in. There it goes. Octpod, OTCPOD1 at gmail.com. If you want to sponsor, reach. We have over 1 million views. People watch the show. They get an opportunity to hear what you're selling, what your wares are, and hopefully we can make some money for you. Yeah, so reach out to us. Once again, that's OTC, not OCT, OTCpod1 at gmail.com. All right, for our final thoughts. You got a last question there, Mike? You want to shoot a quick one?
No, I think we covered everything. I just want to say thank you. This was really, I'm not on the job. I have family on the job, but for me and the things that have happened in my life, I just want to say thank you. Your advice was very helpful, and I'll try to implement it going forward. I just really appreciate everything that you said.
I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you.
No, we'll give you a final thought in a second, but don't forget, if you want to go fuck those guys up, I'm with you. Just point out their house, tell me where you are. Just they won't know what hit them.
They'll be fine. Thank you.
I have one last question before I go, because I'm a big fan of the movie Departed. Did you ever see the movie Departed?
Yes.
Oh boy.
Okay, so in the movie Departed, what's his name? Matt Damon is about to marry a clinician. She works on the job.
Yeah.
And she starts having an affair with Leonardo DiCaprio, who's a young rookie cop. Yeah. So obviously my question is have you ever had to sleep with either Matt Damon or Leonardo DiCaprio?
So I'll give you a short answer, which is no, I've never had to sleep. And then I'll give you a longer answer, which is just that you've touched on something that I wasn't expecting you to, and that undercovers are actually near and dear to my heart. I work with a number of undercover task force officers, undercover shallow busting by people, undercover federal agents. My dissertation was on undercover work, and I absolutely adore and love undercovers, and they're near and dear to my heart. So I wasn't expecting to bring that up, but certainly.
I wish I would have brought it up sooner because that is a fascinating thing. Maybe you'll come back again one day and we could talk
I'd be
about
happy
that.
to.
But that is a fascinating thing because you're trapped in between the two worlds, man. That has to be wear on you quite a bit. All right, so now for plugs. Mike, you got anything to plug?
Well, before I plug my upcoming shows, to your point of The Departed, when I tell you to put the body in the mosh, you put the body in the mosh. One of my favorite lines. But as far as the podcast, I'm really excited about tomorrow's show. I got Ashley Banfield coming up. Really happy to be talking with her. And next week, 2 different shows with 2 cool shows. A good friend of mine, Allie Bauman, she's a reporter on Channel 2 in New York City. She's going to be coming on the show. And Friday, Inspector Ron Wasson for the miniseries The E-Men Inside the NYPD's Emergency Service Unit, Volume 6.
And who do we got? Somebody coming up next Thursday, right?
Oh, this is going to be a good one. Aphrodite Jones. She was recently featured on 2020. She, of course, has been working with police for over 30 years. She's an author, too. So she's going to be great. That'll be Thursday, October 28th.
All right, folks. If you haven't picked it up yet, I don't know what the hell you're waiting for. This is the best comedy album of the year right there, The Bangers. All right. It's called The Bangers. It's available anywhere that you can stream. Anywhere, Spotify, iTunes. If you have Sirius in your car, you're probably already listening to it on Sirius XFM. Please do me a favor, check it out. I guarantee you'll love it. It's a lot of gems on there, a lot of good jokes. If you're looking for something to do this weekend and you live in the Poconos, Friday night I'll be at the Pocono Palace. I'll be performing there with my buddy Chris Monty. And on Saturday I'll also be in the Poconos. I think it's called let me see. It's Paradise Stream. Paradise Stream. Both of these are. You remember when you were a kid and you used to go, like you dated a girl for a little bit, and then you probably spent some time at short stay hotels, and then you think you like her, so you want to up the game up, see if you really get along with her well. Maybe you make her your girlfriend. So what do? You take it to the Poconos, and now you spend the weekend. It's the trip that you do before you go to Aruba or a Caribbean where you're going to be stuck with him for a week. This is the trip that you do. So, but if you live up there, you can still come to the show. Oh, and next week, I think it's November 3rd or 4th, or 2 weeks from now, I'll be at Governor's Comedy Club in Bohemia. So if you live out in Long Island, you want to, I'm going to be posting about that and putting flyers up about that and promoting that. If you live in Long Island, near Bohemia, Suffolk County, love to have you there at Governor's Comedy Club. Doc, what do you got? What are you pitching?
You know what? The only thing that I'll mention, and it occurred to me really when you brought up Departed. I truly do have a tremendous amount of work I've done with undercovers, and one fellow that recently I would love to support is Giovanni Rocco, former task force officer, long-term, decade-long undercover, M13, La Cosa Nostra investigations, outlaw motorcycle gang investigations, and he just wrote a book called Giovanni's Ring. If anybody wanted to check it out or pick it up, it's a fantastic look into the psychology of undercover.
What's it called again?
Giovanni's Ring, like a ring.
All right, I'm going to check it out.
All right, sounds good.
Well, folks, thanks for tuning in. This was a great episode. I learned a lot. And like we mentioned, we'll be back next Thursday, 7 p.m. We have Aphrodite. What was the last name again?
Jones.
Aphrodite Jones. Of course it is. It makes perfect sense. You couldn't make up a better name than that. Aphrodite Jones on the show. Thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks, Doc, for sitting in with us. We appreciate it. We'd love to have you back. Good luck and keep doing God's work, man. We need you. All right.
Thank you. Stay safe, everybody. God bless.
Take care, everyone. Good night.
On behalf of Police Off the Cuff After Hours, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next week.
Bye now.
Bye.